Good Erev Shabbos, everyone. Erev Shabbos, Parshas Seitzei. There is an incredible halacha in the beginning of this week's Parsha. It talks about Ben Sora Mora. Ben Sora Mora is a rebellious child between 13 years old and 3 months. He's eating too much, drinking too much. Parents are beyond wits' end. They don't know what to do with the child. They take the child, bring him to the court, and say to the court, "B'neinu zeh ben Sora Mora." The child is a recalcitrant child, rebellious, and we can't do anything with him. So the court takes him, brings him out to the gateways of the court, and they kill him. Yep, that's what's in the Torah. It's unbelievable. The rabbis then put even a stricter thing on it, and the rabbis say that based on the psukim, based on the wording in the psukim, so then the parents have to look exactly the same. The parents have to talk exactly the same. The parents have to be of the same height. They have to have the same kind of characteristics and features. Because if not, then that child is not a Ben Sora Mora. Because if they're hearing two different messages from their parents, then that's not called a Ben Sora Mora. It's not a rebellious child. That's a regular garden variety screwed up child. But to be a Ben Sora Mora, so then the message has to be clean and pure, and the child has to rebel against that message. Now the problem, of course, with this is that the rabbis tell us that this could never happen, because the conditions are impossible. They can never take place. So this could never happen, and it never will happen, and therefore one has to ask the question of what in the world is this doing here in the Torah? That if we're not really learning anything from it, Josh v'kabel schar, says the Gemara, that you can expound it and you can receive reward from the exposition, but at the end of the day, you're not really, it's just an exposition, so you can learn that from other places. If the whole value of this section is to expound it, so then what exactly is the value of this section? What exactly is the value of this mitzvah? Why do I need to have this mitzvah? So rabbis tell us that why are we killing this child? Because nidna shum sofo. We take a look at the child and we're judging him based on where it's going to end up. And we look at where it's going to end up, that his life is going to end up in terrible places. That if this child is a rebellious child now, at the age of 13, he's already eating too much meat, drinking too much wine, stealing from his father, being brazen about the things that he does. So there's not a great future for this child. And we say that because his future is so bleak, so we take him out of his misery and we take him out of the world now. Now, the only problem with that concept of Nidin al Shum Sofo is that what you're saying is that there's no such thing as tshuva. There's no such thing as change. Because this child is stuck into the place that they are. And therefore, you look forward and just keep taking this thing forward, and you see that, oh gosh, this child is not going to amount to anything. Without a thought or hope or even provision that he could change his life and turn it around and really be something. And that's something that to us is treif. The thought that something is stuck, that's something that's an anathema. And I think that's what the Torah is teaching us. That the reason that the Ben Sora Mora is impossible is because it presents something that is for us an impossibility. That you're stuck into the life that you're developing and that you can never get out of it and you can never change. And that to us is something that is just not true. You're not stuck. You can always change. And you can always grow. And you can always reinvent yourself. And you can always become something different. And that's why the Torah puts a law here. Because what the Torah is telling us is that this law can never happen. Why? Because Nidan Ashum Sofo, looking to the end of a person's life, that can never happen. Because we are not stuck. But you have to ask yourself the question, why does it appear so often that we are stuck? Look at this Rosh Hashanah, look at last Rosh Hashanah, compare the two to each other. What are you crying about this Rosh Hashanah? Same thing you cried about last year. What are you saying I'm going to work on this year? Similar things to what you were working on last year. not necessarily tremendous growth or change. So we seem to be stuck. I appreciate you telling me that a Jew is not stuck. A Jew can always change and reinvent himself. But at the end of the day, I sometimes feel stuck. It sometimes appears that I'm stuck. So what do you think is more difficult? Do we think that, we know that in tshuva, in the process of tshuva, there has to be remorse, there has to be charata, and there also has to be a kabbalah ala asid, there has to be an acceptance for the future. Which of those two do we think is more difficult? So naturally would say that kabbalah ala asid is more difficult. Changing the future. Changing ourselves, saying that we're never going to do this again, incorporating that into our lives, that's much more difficult than having charata, having remorse. We Jews are actually very good at feeling guilty about things, having remorse on things. We're very, very good at that. So that's not really our big challenge. Our big challenge is changing. Our big challenge is making those resolutions and saying, this ain't going to happen again. No, it's a mistake. It's actually the other way around. Changing the future is actually very easy. Once we actually come to the place of charata. You see, to have real remorse means to look at something and say, this was bad, it was wrong. It was something that just isn't, it's not me. And it's not where I want to be, and it's not who I want to be, and it's not what I want to be involved in. Because I'm not this kind of person. Real charata, real remorse means that I regret ever thinking that way, ever being that way, ever going down that road. Most of the time charata is that, I got caught. I feel guilty because I realize that what I'm doing, but not because I look at its very roots and say the very roots, the midah, the characteristic that it came from. That's abhorrent to me. That's an abomination. Very rarely do I come to that place. My charata is usually much more pragmatic, that I feel guilty that I seem to be doing the wrong thing, but not because the wrong thing is something the wrong thing is something that breaks me. The wrong thing is something that with every fiber of my existence, I'm trying to stay away from the wrong thing. And that's why having charata, having remorse over what we've done, is much more difficult. Once I have that charata, once I have that remorse, then I'm not stuck anymore. Now I can change the future. Now I can do anything I want. But I have to have that strength to be able to look at things and to say, this is no good. And that's why I get stuck. Because the strength to be able to be so honest with myself and to recognize what's not really okay, that's much more difficult. Because a lot of times I spend time on my actions, but not on my character. I spend times on the wrong thing that I'm doing, but not the wrong thing that I am becoming. On Yom Kippur, when we do this, and we say Al Chet Shechatanu L'Fanecha, and then we say the Hashamnu. First we say Hashamnu, Baganu, Gazalnu, the Aleph, Beis, Gimel of sin, and then we talk about the Al Chetz for the sin that I committed, for the sin that I committed. Actually, you have to wonder, why do we have to say both? Both the Hashamnus and the Al Chetz. Just say one of them, it's enough. It's a lot. Beating your chest, it's a lot. You get black and blue. But perhaps the Hashamnus is talking about the midos. It's talking about the characteristics. It's talking about the things that have driven me to be in this place. And then the Al Chet, that's about the particular sin, the actual action that I've done. And the reason why tshuva, why change, why reinventing is so difficult, because I spend more time worrying about the actions than I do about the characteristics, about the kind of person that I'm becoming. And if I would just take a few moments to look at myself and to say, is this really who you want to be? Is this really the kind of person that you want to be? Then it would be easy to unstick ourselves. And what the Torah is teaching you, the mitzvah of Ben Saura Mora, you have the strength to do it. You can unstick yourself. And therefore, this could never happen. This Ben Saura Mora is impossible. Because if you open your eyes, you use the mind that was given to you and the heart that was given to you, then you will never be stuck. And you will have the strength, the honesty, and the integrity to be able to look at yourself and say, not as cool as I want it to be. And you'll have the ability to make a Kabbalah ala Asid to change the future and turn it into something awesome and amazing. Everyone should have a beautiful and wonderful Shabbos. It should be a Shabbos that's filled with much bracha and much strength to recognize I'm not stuck. I can still keep moving forward. Have a good Shabbos.